So beginning of day 2, Jim and Jesper here. We are working on skinning the car with aluminum. We got a lot done yesterday. All the suspension's on, brake boosters on, fuel tank is in. So today we're going to put basically the foot boxes on.
We'll get the steering shaft in.
Yep, and then we can start running some brake lines too and just see where that gets us. So what we have here is the first piece of the foot box. We're going to start fitting up all this aluminum so we can get the foot boxes done before we get the engine in and then run the brake lines. We put the aluminum in place. What we're going to do now is mark it. With this car, the aluminum being anodized black, we have to switch to a silver Sharpie, which does contrast well enough with the panels. So basically you hold it in place and mark from the back side everywhere that there's going to be rivets. That way you can take it off and draw your lines and know where your rivets are going to be. So there. Right in there. This piece doesn't have too many, so just like that. And then we know the rivets are going to go along here, along the top, and along the front. Next thing we do is mark for our rivet holes. We give this rivet spacing tool, which has 2 sets of spaces. It has a 3-inch and a 2-inch. Typically what we do is the 3-inch spacing we use where we're going aluminum onto a steel tube, and the 2-inch spacing is where it's aluminum onto another aluminum panel. In the same vein, the rivet sizing, usually we use the short rivets when we're going aluminum to aluminum, and the longer ones when we're going aluminum into steel. So put this down on the panel and mark, because this piece in the first iteration of it is going to go all onto other aluminum. So, all onto other steel. So we're going to use the 3-inch spacing, and we'll just mark for our rivets in each one of these holes. This Sharpie isn't working so great, but it's better. Like that. And then put down a piece of wood. I'm using a pallet here, but any piece of plywood is fine. Drill out these rivet holes. Then you put this piece in place, usually using some of the either original screws or drill the first hole to locate it, and then drill all your holes through the frame, and then you can pull it back off, silicone, and rivet it in place, which we'll get to next. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fit this panel in place so I can drill the holes in the chassis to line up with the holes I drilled in the panel. Because we haven't mounted this aluminum yet, because the anniversary cars we don't, I'm just going to drill the first couple rivets, rivet it in place. That way it's held in the same spot so all the holes will line up. Then I'll have to remove the panel to do the silicone. So this is, usually we use the set screws in here, but in this case I'm just going to pop a couple rivets in and drill them back out. In this case too, I'm just popping some silver rivets in here just because it's temporarily. Once when we're going to put this panel in place permanently, we have black rivets that'll match this nice black anodizing. So what I'm going to do now, lay down a bead of silicone everywhere the aluminum and the frame come in contact, and I usually go right across the rivet holes. That way a little tiny bit goes in where the rivet goes in, which helps seal the rivet. So just go straight across everywhere there's basically the contact between the two pieces. Silicone's on. Now it's time to rivet the panel in place. So this will be the final installation. This will be permanent or semi-permanent. Hopefully you don't ever have to take it off, because we're going to put it on permanently. We're going to use our new black rivets too. So put that through there. Owen was working on the e-brake handle too, so he assembled it and got that in.
All right, so now we have our fully assembled e-brake ready to be bolted into the car. This is gonna go right here. We're gonna start a couple bolts. So there's one there. One goes in the front right here. Now these bolts, you gotta be a little tricky with the nut. You gotta start the bolt, but you don't wanna push it the whole way through before putting the nut in there. This is not a ton of room. So you put the nut in, then you get the bolt started, and then you can push it the whole way through. So do the same thing on the front. Push the bolt a little bit in, then get the nut in there. And then once the nut's in there, you can go ahead and tighten up that bolt. So now, tighten up those bolts. The whole e-brake assembly will be mounted here, and then we just have to run the cables to the back caliper and attach them there, and then we'll be good to go.
When we route the brake lines, we start right in the driver's foot box at the master cylinders, because that's a fixed point. Run them up. You have to decide where to go through the firewall. The easiest or the most hidden place we use is kind of right where the clutch cable would be if you're not running a clutch cable. If you are running a clutch cable, then typically we'd move to the outside corner here, which is a little harder to get to, but if you're planning ahead, you can get there. And then just to keep them hidden and protected, we run them right along the underside of the frame. In this case, because we have the remote booster, we have to run from the front and the back master up to the booster, and then from the booster all the way to the back. So the lines end up being a little bit longer, but still relatively simple. It's just a one in, one out of the booster. From the booster, we come usually back to the driver's side front, tee off there where we're going to put the flex line. So we actually put a T in the end of the hard line, run the flex line right off of the T, which is going to be right in this area. It changes a little bit depending on which brakes you're running, because you want to make sure you have enough reach for the flex line to be able to move when the steering is at full lock and the car is cycled through all the way down in the droop and all the way up in compression. Same side, we run from the T back over to the other side, and you typically put them in the same place. So that line isn't in here yet, but that line will just go down across the bottom and back over to another tab there. From the booster, we run back. Usually what I'll do is I'll run the line along with the wiring harness and the fuel lines back through the tunnel, so they're all tied in one spot together, tight and away from the drive shaft. And it's just a single line. Usually I'll go back to the passenger side rear and then do the same thing we did at the front. So we'll run the line through the tunnel, up the outrigger here into about the area where the soft line is going to be. With the Willwoods, you want to put it behind the shock because that's where the caliper sits. Depending on where your caliper is, you want to run that T in the flex line from. And then from the other side of the T, mirror it back to the other side. And that's a pretty clean install. We leave it up to you how you want to run them, depending on what brakes you're running or what you think looks clean. But that's a good starting point, I think, in terms of just keeping everything out of the way of moving parts and, you know, looking nice and neat.
All right, guys, day two, we're back. A lot of progress has been made on the main chassis. We got the fuel tank in, rear suspension's in, front suspension, brake booster, brake lines. There's a lot of things happening. I'm back here finishing up the dash and the wiring. Basically, once you have all your connections made on the dash, it's always a good idea to cap off any unused connections you have, in addition to also neatening up the wiring, which is exactly what I'm doing here. Zip tie everything, use the corrugated insulation, just to make everything look nice. That way you have no shorts or no wiring problems in the future. Plus, it's going to make it easier for you to work with in the future if you got to get back there to do any sort of repair work or upgrades.
All right, we're wrapping up day two here. Pretty much got done what we expected. All of the foot boxes are in place where we don't need to access anything. We actually got the floors in. Owen was working on the e-brake handle too, so he assembled it and got that in. And yes, we got the steering shaft, all the way down to the rack in. Rear firewall, the rear splash guards, basically everything that we can get in before we want to do things like drop the motor in and do any other routing of lines or run the wiring harness. You got to leave a little bit of the aluminum out so you can still get to that stuff. We did start routing brake lines. We have all the way from the master up to the brake booster and to the back. So we just have to route to the brakes, to the soft lines in the front and the rear. That's next, and then we're really on to the engine.